introduce you to Gunther Oestmann, who is an expert on all things mathematical and mechanical from the Technical University of Berlin. He has been studying horoscopy, scientific instruments related to astrology and to astronomy, and he will now present us something
about his horoscope research. So, Günther, thank you very much, Luis.
The history of science in the early modern period remains incomprehensible to a large extent without taking account of astrology, and the antiquarian and biographer John Aubrey, one of the early members of the Royal Society and deeply convinced of astrology, put it this way, I quote, "For we are governed by the planets as the wheels and weights move the index of a clock." Astrology was the most popular of divinatory arts in the Middle Ages and remained so in the Renaissance and early modern period. But the postulated existence of a connection between celestial bodies and between events in the sky and on Earth was shattered in the so-called age of the scientific revolution and saw a rapid decline in the course of the 17th century. This is a problem in itself, which deserves a separate lecture, of course. Astrology was more and more marginalized as a practice which belonged to the realm of superstition and had no legitimacy in contemporary scientific discourses. It is not my aim to present a comprehensive history of research here. Suffice it to say that the history of astrology as an important element of Western science and culture is now recognized and has received much scholarly attention in recent decades. But one still encounters problems and prejudices. The researcher usually still faces two camps. That is, on the one hand, academic historians of science who are concerned with the history of their respective discipline. On the other hand, there are ardent believers and supporters of astrology, which is still very much alive and flourishing today. There often is decided discomfort among historians and natural scientists, especially astronomers, can be perceived when dealing with astrological matters. Studies in the history of astrology are pretty often the domain of professional astrologers with historical inclinations and the explicit desire for legitimation. This environment is regarded as suspicious and objectionable by many academics, and historians of science working on such allegedly despicable objects of research may still encounter harsh comments from their colleagues. Skirmishes between believers and non-believers are still fought out. An interpretation and validation of astrology in terms of true and false is an inappropriate point of view for the historian. Communication can be difficult on both sides, and the rich literature produced by astrologers is too often ignored by the academic community. Now, for the topic of my talk, the examination of the astronomical and mathematical contents of a horoscope must start with an adequate recalculation, applying the same methods and means the historical calculator had at his disposal. In former days, this was an extremely cumbersome procedure, which is now greatly facilitated by the use of computer programs. Some of these incorporate classical approaches, for example, doctrines of Hellenistic astrology. But the results of such programs depend on correct input, and one has to be well aware of the adequate parameters. Moreover, historical horoscopes often contain calculation errors. The following parameters must be taken into account. First, date. Is the date given according to the Julian or Gregorian calendar? Here, the very different, that is, delayed dates of introduction of the new calendar in Protestant territories must be reconsidered. Second, time. Usually, true local solar time is used, unless the chimes of a mechanical clock are mentioned explicitly. Time indications in minutes and even seconds are not the results of measurements, however. These refer to specific astrological calculations, as you are well aware, methods of rectification, which I will not discuss in detail here. Ephemerides are always calculated in mean time. According to the solar longitude, that is the season of the year, the equation of time ranges from -14 to +16 minutes approximately, thereby affecting the houses to some degrees and lunar longitude to several minutes of arc. Third, epoch of day. There are 4 traditions to reckon the hours from. First, noon, post meridium, sunset, post occasum solis, midnight, ante meridium, before noon, and finally sunset, post solis ortum. These are the epochs of day, which are different from the civil epoch of date, which indicates at which time of date the date changes along with the day of the week. This is not linked with the first hour necessarily. For example, in Italy, the date changed at sunset. 4. Geographical coordinates. The geographical position given in the source must be used, or in the absence of coordinates, contemporary sources need to be consulted, as these may differ significantly from modern values. The history of transmission of geographical coordinates is still largely unexplored. Apart from topographical indices in planetary tables, the lists published in Schöner's Luculentissima, Quaedam Terra et Totius Descriptio, published in Nuremberg in 1515, or Peter Appian's Cosmography, printed several times from 1524 onwards, can be used conveniently when dealing with horoscopes of the early modern period. The choice of a prime meridian is arbitrary and depends on customs, historical, and even political reasons. Here you have a small selection of prime meridians. This is only a part of a larger chart showing Europe. In planetary tables of the early modern periods, the following prime meridians are used. Here you can see, first of all, the Alphonsine tables. The meridian is Toledo. Copernicus in brackets. This is not a table, but of course his main work, De Revolutionibus. Copernicus calculated for the meridian of Frauenburg. The Prutenic tables employ Königsberg, and finally, as you all know, the modern reference meridian since 1884 is Greenwich. I may add that horoscopes for southern latitudes first appeared in the final stages of the colonization of South America at the beginning of the 17th century. And fifth, planetary positions. For the recalculation and examination of planetary positions, contemporary parameters must be used. Astronomers and astrologers either used tables containing planetary positions for a certain time, interval in advance, that is ephemerides, or tables which allowed the calculation of planetary positions for any desired time. Only a concise survey can be given here. Suffice it to say that until the 16th century, the Alphonsine tables based on Ptolemaic parameters were used for the main part. In 1551, the Protenic tables were published for the first time. These were based on the parameters in Copernicus's De Revolutionibus, and most of the remaining ephemerides of the second half of the 16th century were derivatives of the Protenic tables. The prediction of planetary positions according to various planetary tables and ephemerides yielded discrepancies that could provoke conflicting astrological interpretations. This problem has been discussed in the 16th century repeatedly. The Protenic tables had a periodic error of the sun's longitude of only 16 minutes, but for Mars, deviations between +3 degrees and -2 degrees occurred, and the position of Mercury could be erroneous up to 10 degrees, and Venus of -4 degrees at worst. The error for Mars and Jupiter was 30 to 40 minutes, and the error of the moon's motion of the mean motion of the moon was about ±40 minutes, because variation, first discovered by Tycho Brahe, was not considered. Kepler's discovery of the laws of planetary motion not only marks a turning point in celestial mechanics, but also with regard to the terms of attainment and of accuracy in the prediction of planetary positions. Deviations between Kepler's parameters and modern calculations are very small and can be ignored for historical recalculations. Sixth, houses, domification. This is, as you all know, a purely astrological concept. It is a division of the zodiac into 12 fields formed by 6 great circles in the form of spherical triangles. Specific meanings have been ascribed to the 12 houses, as you all know. I need not to elaborate further here. The signs and planets all move through these in varying periods of time, and each house provides information of different areas of human life. The astrological houses depend on the sidereal time, which in turn depends on the sun's position in the ecliptic. Since solar longitude differs in various historical planetary tables, the computation of the houses requires a selection of one of these tables. There are manifold methods of house division, not new to you, but discussing these in detail and delineating their very complex history would clearly lead too far here. Generally, the methods of domification can be classified into 3 groups. First, ecliptical methods, that is, the division of the ecliptic is used. Second, space systems. Conceptual foundation is the celestial sphere without reference to the ecliptic. By partitioning the space into sections by trigonometrical methods, the houses are formed, and then the location of the ecliptic is considered. Third, time systems. These refer to the diurnal rotation of the celestial sphere. In contrast to other systems, neither the ecliptic nor the heavens, but time units are used for house division. Most likely, some methods falling under these three groups are being encountered in historical sources. Some contemporary attributions are spurious. For example, the system of Campanus was not created by Campanus, and also the system of Regiomontan is only connected with his name, but I will not elaborate further on this here, and I will omit the current discussion on whole sign houses. I will now present 3 historical examples. First, the nativity of the astronomer Johannes Schöner. Here is a portrait preserved in Hanover. On the On the right, on the upper corner on the right, his ascendant, Libra. And the globe, of course, refers to Schöner as a maker of instruments, especially globes. His nativity is published in Schöner's Opera Mathematica, printed in Nuremberg 1551, which you can see here. His horoscope is present in different horoscope collections, partly with different numerical values. According to Schöner's own statement, the latitude of his birthplace, Karlstadt, is 50 degrees north. The actual value is 49 degrees, 57 minutes. In his Luculentissima, already quoted, Schöner gives 50 degrees 5 minutes and a longitude of 26 degrees 55 minutes east of his chosen prime meridian on the island of Porto Santo, that is near Madeira. It is very likely that Schöner used the Alphonsine tables for calculating the planetary positions. The reference meridian of the Alphonsine tables is Toledo, that is 9 degrees 4 minutes east of Porto Santo. Therefore, Karlstadt is 17 degrees 50 minutes east of Toledo. For January 16th, 1477, at 11 p.m., the following positions result. Here I have noted degrees, minutes, and followed by the respective sign. On the left, the values given in Schöner's Opera Mathematica. On the right, my recalculation. The ecliptical longitudes are rendered in full degrees. It is obvious that the positions of the Moon, as well as Mars, Venus, and Mercury, are deviating considerably. The ecliptical longitudes of Mars, Venus, and Mercury are obviously misprints. It should read 28 degrees, 19 degrees, and 10 degrees respectively. For the Moon, I can offer no explanation, however. Regarding the houses, it is notable that the cardinal houses, that is, ascendant, midheaven, descendant, imum coeli, have been given precisely in degrees and minutes, whereas for intermediate houses, Schöner contented himself with full degrees only. Schöner has used Regiomontan's method of domification. Again, on the left side, the original source, on the right, the recalculation. As you can see, at first glance, there must be something wrong. A time of 11 hours, 25 minutes on the right gives the best approximation. This is a puzzling result, as Schöner was a very competent and knowledgeable astronomer, astrologer, and geographer as well. But this horoscope seems to have been handed down in somewhat garbled form. There is also a manuscript version extant in Schöner's estate, preserved in the Austrian National Library, which you can see here, Schöner's autograph. The celestial configuration for January 16th, 1477, 10 hours 53 minutes p.m., latitude 50 degrees north, longitude 17 degrees 50 minutes east of Toledo, is as follows. Again, on the right, the values in the original source, on the right, the recalculation. Apart from a slight difference, that is the cusp of the third house, everything is correct, including the lot of fortune, which should be expected from a competent astronomer. So we have a very bad printed version and a really correct autograph of Schöner. My second example refers to Johannes Kepler, who has amassed a comprehensive collection of horoscope of about 350 pages for approximately 800 individuals, which have been published as the 21st volume of his opera Omnia in 2009. His collection also contains the famous horoscope for Wallenstein, and its surrounding story is well known, of course. In 1608, Gerhard von Taxis, a nobleman in the service of Wallenstein, acted as intermediary and approached Kepler via a physician named Strohmeyer and requested a horoscope for himself as well for a certain Bohemian gentleman. And Kepler cast the two horoscopes, which you can see here. This picture has been taken from the original manuscript now preserved in the Academy of Sciences in St. Petersburg. But Kepler corrected, that is, rectified the birth time of his anonymous client, as can be seen from the crossed out figures. Later on, in 1625, Kepler rectified the horoscope again and, albeit rather reluctantly, provided detailed astrological prognostications garnished with skeptical remarks. Analyzing this text thoroughly would require a special lecture, however. Since its discovery in the 19th century, Kepler's horoscope for Wallenstein has always exerted great attraction, and the publications are correspondingly numerous. However, it has become apparent that many of the recalculations and historical interpretations carried out so far are based on false assumptions and in some cases show considerable methodological flaws. Kepler's horoscope for Wallenstein has been examined recently in 2005 by the astronomers Claudia Einhorn and Günther Wuchtel. And they stated in their paper, I quote, "We checked the horoscope with redshift 32 ephemeris and ephemeris tool 4.53 with VSOP 87 high precision ephemeris and found that the famous Wallenstein horoscope is wrong." Now, this fact is, historically speaking, entirely irrelevant. Whether Kepler's data agree with modern parameters or not does not matter and leads to faulty conclusions and misconceptions. Let us have a preliminary look at the rectified horoscope of 1625. Wallenstein was born on September 14th, 1583, Old Style, in Hermanice nad Labem, that is Hermanitz an der Elbe, and the modern coordinates of this town are 50 degrees 23 minutes north, 15 degrees 55 minutes east of Greenwich. The recalculation shows that Kepler used the Prutenic tables with the reference meridian Königsberg. The Rudolphine tables had not been printed already, of course. According to Appian's Cosmographicus Liber of 1533, Kutna-Ora, Kuttenberg, which is a bit west of Hermanitze nad Labem, lies 32 degrees 55 minutes east of the island Porto Santo near Madeira, and Königsberg is 42 degrees 60 minutes east. This is a difference of longitude of 9 degrees 27 minutes and nearly twice the modern amount, which is 5 degrees 13 minutes. On the other hand, Erasmus Reinhold, in his Prutenic tables, published in 1551, places Prague only 40 minutes west of Königsberg. This example illustrates clearly how imprecise geographical coordinates, especially longitudes, could be in the 16th century. In my recalculation, I have assumed a longitude of 9 degrees west of Königsberg. The value of longitude is important for the moon's position only. On the left, the figures given in the original source are noted. On the right, the recalculation. When we look at the boundaries of the 12 houses, which you can see here, it is clearly discernible that the horoscope cannot be calculated for 4 hours and 1 minute PM, but rather 4 hours and 23 minutes. Such inconsistencies to affect all subsequent calculations of directions, of course. This needs to be researched further. My third example is a horoscope cast by Erhard Weigel, professor of philosophy and mathematics in Jena. Weigel had already become acquainted with astrology during his school years in Halle. He worked as a typist for the princely Magdeburg court mathematician Bartholomäus Schimpfer. Schimpfer enjoyed a certain reputation in astrologices, for he had prophesied the imminent death of Emperor Ferdinand III during the funeral of Elector Johann Georg I of Brandenburg in 1656, and who actually died the following year. During a holiday stay in Wunsiedel in 1645, Weigel received the higher orders as an astrologer from the archdeacon, that is Episcopal representative Jakob Elroth, who introduced him both in the casting of a horoscope and in astrological forecasting techniques, that is directions and profections. From then on, Weigel calculated horoscopes for Schimpfer for a fee. Weigel continued to occupy himself with astrology in Leipzig and Jena, and although he became increasingly critical of the influence of the stars on human behavior, he still held to the astrological effects of comets. A solar return chart for the 59th year of Duke Wilhelm IV of Saxe-Weimar by the hand of Weigel has been preserved. This was drawn up for the time when the sun returns to its ecliptical longitude at birth and related to the birth horoscope, that is the radix horoscope. From this, it was thought that the course of events in the following year could be discerned, whereby the transits of the planets via certain horoscope factors, such as house cusps, allowed a sharper chronological determination. Usually, for casting a solar return chart, the latitude of the birthplace was used, which is also the case with the present horoscope. The significance of a solar return lay in the fact that one could infer the effect of directions in the year of life in question. In this case, the round diagram popularly used in the 16th and 17th centuries was used, which could be easily constructed using a compass. The date is given according to the Julian calendar, and the day epoch corresponds to astronomical usage, that is, the date changes at noon, 12 o'clock. As usual, the true local time is given. Altenburg is located about 40 kilometers south of Leipzig. The geographical coordinates are given in 1669 by the Saxon astronomer and art chamberlain Tobias Beutel as 51 degrees north latitude and 35 degrees 58 minutes east, with the reference meridian presumably passing through the island of Faroe. London lies at a longitude of 20 degrees 30 minutes, resulting in a difference in longitude between Altenburg and London of 15 degrees 28 minutes. For comparison, the modern coordinates of Altenburg, which are 50 degrees 59 minutes north, 12 degrees 26 minutes east of Greenwich. Again, this example clearly shows how uncertain longitudes could be in the 17th century. But as mentioned before, these differences only lead to significant errors in the case of the rapid movement of the moon, and the positions of the other planets are hardly affected by this. On the other hand, the influence of an incorrect latitude on the ascendant and the house boundaries are considerable. In his Disputatio de Eclipsibus of 1654, Weigel mentions that he based his calculations on Kepler's Rudolphine tables published in 1627. It can be assumed that Weigel also used these tables for the recalculation of the present horoscope. If we look at the planetary positions, the ecliptical longitudes are given in degrees and minutes. As always, it is noticeable that Weigel has given the longitudes of the Sun and Moon down to arc seconds. This is unusual, as it was not uncommon for horoscopes to use only full degrees. The planetary positions show only slight deviations. So everything has been calculated correctly. As far as Weigel's preferred house division is concerned, it can be assumed that he used the rational manner associated with the name of Johannes Regiomontan, and the recalculation clearly confirms this assumption. If you compare the values of the source and the recalculation. A special feature is the presence of 4 fixed stars of first magnitude and the star cluster of the Pleiades. That is 6 stars visible to the naked eye in Taurus in the horoscope, listed here. Ophiuchus and Cor Scorpionis in the first house, Cor Leonis, Regulus in the ninth house, Spica in the 11th house, and the Pleiades in the 7th house. It is not known which aspects were decisive in this selection. The astrological influences of the stars mentioned are partly quite problematic. For example, Antares in the first house brings honor and generosity, but also many dangers and misfortunes, malice, destructiveness, evil forebodings, and danger of death. On the other hand, it is an important star for military personnel. It is said to convey mental alertness, strategic skill, and courage, and to make daredevils. Regulus, on the other hand, conveys royal qualities, noble spirit, openness, and courage, brings success, lofty ideals, and strength of mind, but also violence, destructiveness, military honors of short duration, imprisonment, and violent death. The rising Spica gives unlimited luck, wealth, unexpected honor or advancement beyond the hopes or abilities of the born, as well as love of the arts and science. The Pleiades with Mars, on the other hand, have a decidedly negative effect, promising lust, ambition, unrest, and a violent death. Finally, Ophiuchus brings misfortune through women, perverted tastes, and spiritual depravity. Well, be this as it may, Weigel had divided his interpretation of the configuration of the heavens into 4 sections. First, of the state of the body, second, of the state of the mind, third, of the state of happiness, and fourth, of obnoxiousnesses, and he concluded his remarks with the following words, and I quote, "Finally, I wish from God Almighty that he would graciously avert all that is unpleasant, but fatherly bestow the good and grant your princely grace a blissful, healthy, peaceful, and joyful new year, and countless years of life following with continuous happiness." My talk is finished, but let me say a few concluding words. This conference is not over yet, but I may venture to say that it is definitely a success in every respect. Therefore, your applause should not be addressed to me, but to Luis and his colleagues for their tireless efforts and kind hospitality. I am pretty sure that Helena is looking down on us with a benevolent smile. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Gunther. So, questions, anyone? We have to give you a mic of your own. You need to connect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Right. So, sorry for asking again. So I would like to ask you about the Weigel horoscope. If I understand it correctly, this is a solar revolution.
Yes.
And maybe this fact should explain this weird feature of employing the arc minutes or the arc seconds, for the sun and the moon. At least for the sun, because unless we know the arc seconds, it is hardly possible to calculate this. So I guess that this is the explanation. But do you think that there is an explanation for a similar explanation for the arc seconds of the moon in this case?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay. And my other question is that in this horoscope, as you mentioned, there is this prominent fixed star in the first house, that is the Antares. And strangely, Weigel omits from the seventh house, the Aldebaran, which is almost exactly opposite of this core Scorpionis. Is it possible that Pleiades stand as a substitute? So he also means the core Tauri in this case, or it is just he thinks that this fixed star is important, that the other one is not so important. So like shuffling with the data.
Unfortunately, I have no clue. There is no additional source available.
But in the interpretation, nothing is said about this fact.
No. Okay. Unfortunately not.
Well, this is really unfortunate. Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, just one observation. Maybe he included Pleiades because they are in conjunct with Mars. So maybe this is the clue. So it's changed interpretation of Pleiades in this chart because they are more important because of Mars.
Okay, thank you. I'm just curious, you said in the beginning that mechanical clocks were sometimes used for these early horoscopes.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit more? Which kind of horoscopes? Why using the mechanical clock? If there's any discussion about using mechanical clocks, just a little bit more background, I would be happy about.
Yeah. There is a discussion on on time measurements in the 16th century, of course, and the accuracy of available clocks. And but I have found many horoscopes mentioning explicitly the chime of a clock. That is, according let's give an example: 10 hours 23 minutes, according to a clock, or 10:30 clock chime, or something like this. It is explicitly mentioned in several, especially nativities. But there is a discussion, of course, on the reliability of these measurements. And as you all know, many horoscopes have been rectified afterwards, or according to specific techniques.
I'm asking because you're probably the person on the planet who knows most about actual horoscope collections today. When you discussed the Weigel interpretation, you mentioned that he structures his interpretation in 4 categories.
Yeah.
So you had specific terms. Were those Weigel's own terms? I think there was.
These were Weigel's own terms, and let's see.
Anyway, it doesn't matter, but my question was rather whether it is possible to connect, whether it's possible to track changes in the genre of an interpretation? What kind of categories do you attach an interpretation to, on the one hand, and if it's possible to also connect that to specific handbooks? Because there was something in what you said about Weigel that reminded me of Garceus's Astrologia Methodus of 1576. Yeah.
This is
where I have the impression that
this is probably correct. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that was not a coincidence. That's very interesting, because I was under the impression that, for instance, Garceus starts to do interesting things about what things you locate to the category of body and what you locate to mind. Mind is an interesting category in itself.
Yeah.
So there's all this stuff going on. Do you notice the same things? I mean, you notice you have access to material that nobody else.
I have not made comprehensive comparisons of different horoscopes of this kind, but I agree this should be made.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
This is just a very general question. When did the circular horoscope actually appear again? Because of course it was circular in classical times, and then it became square.
Well, as far as I can see, this specific circular form emerges in the 16th century. Garceus, yes. And Garceus has circular diagrams already. Yeah. I may venture to say first half of the 16th century, roughly.
Anybody in particular? Just
No, I really don't think so.
More questions? Then thank you, Günther.
Thank you.